Okay, we'll try one more time. Welcome, everybody, to the Networks of Practice Portfolio Kickoff. Goodness knows where we'll go next. Okay, so I'm going to try here to go to the next slide. Just above your yellow black bar. Yeah, okay. Okay, here we go. So this is what we want to do today. We want to introduce you to your early thinking on what the Networks of Practice portfolio looks like. We wanted to ask you a few questions or just get your feedback and then answer your questions on what we're thinking about so far. That's what we wanted to do today. Is there anything else that people have come with? Burning. I guess you could frame whatever you want as a question, but is there anything else that you were hoping that we would cover today or things that we might get to so we put them in? All right, waited for my 8. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's Eileen. So if nobody else had things that they wanted to come with, then I thought I would kick it off, if that's okay.
That is where it was going. Thanks, Eileen.
Go ahead. Okay. So, and I'm so excited about this because I go to so many other meetings where we talk about the strength of the Networks of Practice, and I'm going, wouldn't it be nice if when we kick off the Networks of Practice meeting, to talk about how it's fitting into so much of the other work and how we can be moving forward with it. So we heard from Mike about the AMA being about helping physicians be successful. And we know that for physicians to be successful, they need for PCN executive directors to be successful, for clinic managers to be successful, for improved facilitators, for their communications team to be successful. We know that they need to come together for the right events to sort of get everything, get some synthesis around what's going on. So there's so many pieces, and those are the pieces that we are supporting from that bigger picture. So when we think about the priorities that we have for the integrated patient's medical home, we're hearing about that this is key delivery mechanism, actually. So although we usually talk about delivery being in the zone structure, we talk about what we're delivering in the PCNs and with the zones. In fact, we're also delivering through the Networks of Practice. And so it's what straddles development and delivery, because we're reshaping the key content that's being developed through the opioid priorities and other pieces. And so it's such a valuable piece that drives the patient results and satisfaction, and so as well as system performance. So to me, I'm excited to hear how we can come together as a group and say, so how does this mean our work is different? What can we do differently that adds value and accelerates, our results in terms of the field? Because to different, we're building on our strengths. So to make that clear, what I mean is how can we learn from the strong things we've already put in place and say, now let's come together in a different way and accelerate some of that. So I'm working with the population and community health planning portfolio, so our VELS portfolio around opioid, or the strengthening partnerships, transitions of care for integration, or the patient's medical home, or accountable effective governance. It's all about saying, yes, they can do some work in some zonal implementation, but we need to be, but what really raises the water for all boats is the Networks of Practice. And so we're going to be really pivoting to make sure that we can figure out together actually in our opportunities. So thanks, Lori, because I just wanted to share with people that the opportunity that we have comes up at so many other tables. So to me, this is a huge milestone for all together to sort of kick it off and start the conversation with those of you who bring the strength to what we've been doing. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Eileen. Are there any questions in our rooms or on the phone for Eileen? we can never pick as we go through. What I wanted to do was talk a little bit about the terminology, and there's been some confusion around how we're using some of the words. So I wanted to first actually talk a little bit about those pieces, so we're all clear as we're using words throughout the next little bit, that we're all on the same page. So the portfolio are the portfolios used to be called projects. So there were projects, they're now called portfolios. So those are the 5 zones. So Calgary, Central, Edmonton, and North zones are 5 zonal portfolios. And 4 portfolios that are aligned with the PCN objectives. Those are our development portfolios. Can anybody name them?
I can't. I feel like that's cheating.
Anybody want to name them? Patients in the home.
Accountable and active governance. Team integrated team support and change and support. Sorry, I tried.
No, okay. You're close. You're close with the integrate. Integration and one more. No.
Transitions and partnerships or something.
Oh,
right.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, that's the integration one. Strengthening. That's what. Keep what. Strengthening partnerships and transitions of care. IAA integration. Oh, for real.
And more.
Health needs of the community and population.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks. Did anybody want to repeat those for? So you're all over the place.
Tell me again.
The four development portfolios that align with our 4 PCN objectives.
patient medical home, accountable and effective governance.
Yep.
Integrate, otherwise known as strengthening partners and teams, and I've lost the rest of it, Eileen, sorry. And health population.
Health needs of the population. Eileen, did you want to jump in and clarify?
Strengthening partnerships and transitions of care. And just to be clear, we internally create that name. Those names are directly aligned to the 4 PCN objectives. So we're just aligned at another level, but I absolutely hear you. Absolutely hear you.
Thanks, Eileen. Hi, and welcome, Grant. So for those of you on the phone, Grant just joined in the room and then. Okay, and we've got three more portfolios. One of them is practice. It is
Haley said it before. Integrated team support and change.
Yes. And the other one who is as of yet unmanned by a lead, but Christine's around strategic partnerships. Correct name? I don't even nickname.
Project office?
No, that's Alexis.
Oh, that's the project.
The provincial committees, I think. I don't know if it's the provincial committees for all the
Andrea.
It's Andrea. That's what government is. No?
That's fine. I do have
we have need, I think. A huge, here we go. All of us are confused.
provincial strategic committee.
provincial strategic committees. There's that there. So, yeah, look at this a little bit later. I apologize. I realize
that is Andrea.
I had an old.
That's Andrea as well.
Old
Andrea is
version.
involved in a lot of those provincial committees. So maybe we kind of rolled it up into one role with governance and that, because that's a lot of what she's doing.
It has disregarded by Liz and all the meetings I've been in, making it hard for me to count.
People are taking notes.
All right, so perhaps some tweaking live news for us here right now. But yeah,
it's been some of the names have switched in this.
Yes.
This is an old slide, so.
I just mentioned that. I noticed that late this afternoon. So that Edmonton is okay, and Andrea is there under accountable and effective governance. So my apologies. I noticed that just a little bit too late for us. So go back. So I'm glad we're pausing to talk a little bit about terminology and get on the same page with understanding this. So the portfolios, those are what we're seeing our portfolios in our new structure. And then within each of the portfolios, there will be a number of projects. And you'll see underneath project, we have the word project segments, which we've crossed out. So that's some former terminology that may still be lingering in some of the documents that you see. But we've now we've shed that language in favor of the project and project segments to distinguish them a little bit more clearly into portfolio and into project. So think about health needs of the population. Opioid would be a project that sits under that bucket. When we think about patients' medical home, we could think of PACS as one project under that bucket, or panel and continuity as another piece. So then we've the bits of work here underneath each of the portfolios. So those are what we're referring to as projects. We'll get a little bit more deeply into that when we take a closer look at networks. Questions about what that? Good. And so each of the portfolios has a sponsor, which we saw on that page, and we'll revisit that again. But Eileen introduced herself as the portfolio sponsor for Networks of Practice. Our portfolio sponsors come from the Leadership Council. And then we have the portfolio leads. So each of the portfolios has a lead named to them for Networks of Practice. I'm your portfolio lead. We were using the Technology Integrated Team Lead. So it hasn't completely done. I know people are still using portfolio leads, integrated team leads interchangeably, and I'm not sure that we've landed on that. But right now, those are synonymous until further notice. Just about that one. Or I've got a couple from the Leadership Council here, so if there's any clarity you can provide, please.
So I just have a question about this slide. Is this something that all portfolio leads will be presenting? So like the whole integrated team is aligning to this terminology, or is this just something you've taken upon yourself?
I made this slide yesterday afternoon, just based on some of the feedback that we had received in conversation that we've had to date. So I know that as a group, we landed on the portfolio project understanding, but not around the portfolio leads and integrated team leads. That conversation hasn't taken place.
I really like this. I appreciate that you're taking the time to go through this. I just wonder if maybe all portfolio leads should see this slide.
Or if we
I think that makes sense, and I believe my preference would be portfolio leads, because I think that's more true to the model we have today. I think just old habits die hard. And that lingers. It's not everybody's here, because I think all that the clarity of just using common.
I'm wondering if, again, just thinking of the one-to-many approach, and so we all get the same message and have the same discussion at the same time, if this is something that could be communicated with the entire integrated team, so we're all getting the same message at the same time, and so that we develop a shared mental model of this.
Conversation cafe and even an app.
Yeah.
I don't see it from a number of fronts where people access information.
For consistency's sake, just so you know, when portfolio sponsors and portfolio leads met together, they also agreed on the terms deliverable, quarterly objectives, project, portfolio. So those 4 terms were agreed upon by everyone, so they should be repeated. So from an evaluation perspective, you should be able to count on an understanding
of the use of those terms.
But don't tell us when you're
I would just add that Lori and I can take the idea of this back to the rest of the portfolio leads, because actually once I saw this, I was like, oh, that's a good way to set the stage. So I made a note for myself to do that, and we can share this feedback with the rest of the leads as well. Great. Thanks.
For those who are in those roles, it's still hard to get their head around it, let alone people who are less familiar and less discussions on it. So I think it's a valid point. Continue with the communication.
Great. So the last two pieces of that came to my mind were deliverables and quarterly objectives. This was a little bit more like calculus when I went through this exercise and wrapping our heads around what we actually mean by those. But it's language that you're going to hear. I'll try introducing it briefly here, and then maybe as we get in a little bit deeper, looking at the network's work, it'll become a little bit clearer. But we were asked to look at two things for the project office and for helping us think about the work that we're doing as teams within our project. And the office has asked us to provide deliverables for each of our portfolios today. On December 31st or March 31st, whatever our year-end date is going to be, what are you going to have accomplished as a portfolio? That's the question that they want us to be able to answer. So what are you going to deliver? I've tried to think about 4, 3, or 5 big things that we're going to do as a network. So Doug can say, what are we funding you? We brought you together to do work. What is it that you're going to do? So in order for us to think about that exercise, we've actually gone through and tried to think about some of those deliverables for each of the projects to say what's common here and what at the end of the day does Doug want to know, does Brad want to know, would Mike Gormley want to know about the investment that they're making in networks of practice. Those are something we would accomplish collectively over the course of about a year. And then we are asked to create quarterly objectives. The word for this that might make sense to a lot of you would be milestones. So what are we actually doing quarter to quarter? So if we're looking at, well, we're going to do what we did on December 31st, that we don't start panicking on December 1st, kind of have that work broken up along the way to say, by June 30th, we're going to have done X, Y, and Z, and by September 30th, we'll have done A, B, and C. So that's some of the work that we've been asked to do, and so we're talking the language that we're using are deliverables and quarterly objectives. There's a lot of other words that come from the evaluation world, that come from the project management world, activities, milestones, different ways to get it, but this is the language that we landed on. So, Alina, I'll ask you to pipe in right now if you have anything that you'd like to add around this.
I wonder as we're moving into this if it would be helpful if we used it as annual deliverables and quarterly objectives. I wonder if that would help people understand it differently, just until they get used to it, because that's how we're
Okay. Got it, but I can wait. Are you going to show examples later?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll wait.
Yes. Okay. And is there any other terminology that's kind of been kicking around that any verification on?
I think that people are familiar with is goals, because we have goals in our professional development plans and stuff. Is linking that. I think have to probably do a little bit more work on making sure that people's personal plans are linked well to their duly stated deliverables and that line of sight. As an individual and your team, how it fits in with the portfolio deliverables.
Do we have is there like an actual definition specifically related to this for a network of practice? And is there any difference between a network of practice and a community of practice?
Oh boy.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Not a can of worms. It's coming. I thought it was on the next slide, and I was going to give you $10 for that.
Okay, that's fine.
If you want to hang on to
Yeah.
that, yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment.
Gold star question.
Yeah. Just about why the new integrated team structure and these processes. So we talked a little bit about the structure and the language around portfolio and project, and then those processes that we're talking around the deliverables, milestones, et cetera. So we really want to articulate the work that we're doing in a standardized way across the team. So that's one of the reasons that we've created, that the structure's been created for us. I want to drive some thought around outcomes and how we're achieving them. So I think for a lot of us, we've been doing some amazing work, and the work has been aligned and a really strong way, but perhaps not in a super purposeful way. So we're trying to step back a little bit and talk about it and start using the language that we're actually having our PCNs use around, what outcomes are the PCNs having, or are they creating with the work that they're doing, and we want to be able to do the same thing, be able to walk our talk. We want to align the work across the integrated team. So of course we brought 3 programs together, and we've been supporting the same customer in the field, but we want to align the work in a different way. We have our new PCN objectives, and we know that we have a new vision going forward with PCN evolution, and we needed a new way to achieve that. So the new structure is going to allow us to align the work in a very purposeful way. And then, very importantly, we wanted to be able to allocate individuals to the work. I use the word task because that's some work. That's a word you'll be probably getting a little bit more familiar with as we move into the structure in using the software. Alexa can talk about that in her kickoff meeting about the function box software. We'll be actually looking at chunks of work that people are assigned to do and assigning hours to them, because we know that we need to manage people's workloads here very strongly across the team. Other people are at capacity or over capacity, and we want to be able to manage that by actually spelling out what the work is and for the individuals in each of the portfolios, and then be able to assign hours to that. So we can then so that's another important piece of work. So as we think about what are the buckets of work, what are the chunks of work that we need to do, and then what is it going to take from each of the individuals across the integrated team to that. And so I've got my lens on that specifically with the network portfolio to say, Lisa, what are all of the things that we're going to need you to do in order to achieve the things that we want to in each quarter to achieve that big annual deliverable. Lisa, these are 25 things I'm going to need you to do over the next year, and work with you to say this is how many hours each of those pieces is going to take, and then be able to go forward and arm wrestle somebody else in the organization so we can have your capacity. But we need to be able to understand what all of the pieces of work are, what it's going to take for each individual to do it, and then from there, they need to be engaged in a prioritization, and if we need to slow something down or put something on pause in order to bring something else to the forefront. I'll pause there, see if there's any questions about the structure and why we're doing all of this work. Next page. All right, so Team Day, several of you stopped by the network, the practice tool, when we were doing some of our activities with each of the portfolios, and you had a number of questions. So thank you, Antonia and Eileen and others who got up and grabbed the pen to log some of the questions. So we had a few themes. I themed them a little bit ago, Tim. There were some questions around this. So are networks organic or just for information sharing? Have the drivers for the various networks been internal or external? And are we learning from best practices in other provinces. So I kind of brought the questions together in themes. I thought I could talk about them. So note about networks of practice and communities of practice. So you go to the early literature and the early thinking on communities of practice, they're very organic. And the first place that they start to talk about communities of practice starting up was in the automotive industry, where there used to be functional groups. So you were in engineering, or you were in bodywork, or you were in industry work. Anyways, they had all of these groups, but they weren't efficient. So they restructured to say, instead of working by each of those areas, they brought groups together and said, okay, you know what, this group, you're going to go and build a Jeep. And brought a few people in from each of those groups. They brought in the engineers, they brought in the tire guys, the frame, the painters, brought them all together to see if they could make it the groups work more efficiently. And lo and behold, they did. It was actually quite astounding, bringing those functional groups together. They were able to actually get a car to market a lot quicker and a lot cheaper. So it became a lot more efficient. However, what happened over time is each of those groups started to feel isolated. So the engineers, for instance, started to say, no, we need to actually touch base and find out what's happening across the other ones. So we're building the Jeep, but the guy over there building the SUV. We need to talk to them too and share information. What happened in a lot of those companies is it was actually very organic. It wasn't the company bringing those groups together, but those communities started to come together on their own. So that's really early what actually happened and how they started naming communities of practice. And companies started to see that there was a lot of value in them, so they were provided support and infrastructure, but they were still coming together because they just had their own need, and their work was internally and self-driven. And so if you look at that literature comes out of the 80s, and when we started looking at it more broadly, you can start to see the evolution in other areas where companies started becoming more purposeful about them, or groups. It wasn't just within companies, but it might be across companies. Groups start to come together, and so there are the purists, where communities of practice are just those ones that groups come together themselves because they have a common interest or a common problem that they need to solve, and they come together and work things out, and it's very self-sustaining. But that actually falls along a spectrum where companies will bring groups together to say, know that there's benefit, so we're going to bring you some support and provide a little bit more direction and infrastructure. So community practice and networks fall on a spectrum. And when we look at a lot of our own that we have here, some of them are mandated under grant agreements. Some of our networks have no choice but to run them. Other networks have been a little bit more organic, where the groups have actually asked to come together and asked individuals in the AMA to help to support them. Others, we said, we have a need. We need, the literature tells us that we can be more successful bringing groups together. So to answer your question, we have the full spectrum of communities of practice, and we've named networks of practice rather than referring to them as communities, because there are those people that do claim communities of practice are strictly those pure groups that are self-formed and are more self-sustaining. Absolutely, we've got a lot on the other end of the spectrum where we're actually quite deliberate and fostering them. Also there, I know there's a lot of people in the room that have experiences and knowledge with communities of practice and networks, so I'll open up the floor if anybody would like to add to that.
Just a key message I would want to share is that for that continuum, Lori, as you were saying about, for a purpose, that our purpose is that we support them when it's because it's linked to integrated patients' medical home. So that's what's different, as opposed to if as a group they wanted to do something, but it wasn't going to advance integrated patients' medical home, well, they can do what they want to do, but we support work that advances integrated patients' medical home. I looked up, I Googled, Lori, network versus community, because it is sort of an interesting kind of a thing. And apparently there's such a thing as networks of practice. It's different too. So very much aligned with what you say. So just depending on what you just said, that community, they have a shared interest, and I might join a community of practice. If I'm a mentor, I don't have anything to gain myself, but it's just an interest. I'm committed. Networks of practice, in some circles, think like the word networking. I have a networking group because I want to get something sometimes. You never know what I might be able to get from them, right? So it's a little bit more transactional, where I want to get something, I might be able to get something, and so I thought that was, and that's just new. Sorry, that's just new information because of that question. I couldn't help but Google and say, like, because we don't deliberately focus on that, as Lori said, but I thought it was interesting.
Thanks. Any other comments from phone or?
So I have one comment, and that I think, I don't know if this is going to add clarity, but for the purposes of this is our external data. This isn't internal.
Yes. There were a number of questions from teams around the skills that individuals need. And so this was a question around skills inventory. Do you want to, as a portfolio lead, do each of the project leads know what each of the individuals can bring to the table? And, if we're lacking in a skill, how are we actually going to figure that out and make sure that individuals have skills, that we have all of the skills that we need to tap into from the network's portfolio? So I think this is probably a work in progress. And as we work through and as we start to take a deeper dive into what the network looks like, we'll be looking to you to come forward, a few of you already have, on day and afterwards to say, this is what I see a gap in your thinking with the portfolio. I see this could be filled. I have this expertise, or my teammates have these expertise. So several of you have already come forward. We don't know yet what that full breadth is and where some of our gaps are. And we haven't quite landed on what that is going to look like. I know it's part of the work that Alexis' portfolio was doing around, around talent development. So just so you know, we're on it in terms of looking at it more broadly from an organizational perspective. And as we start to develop a little bit more deeply the work that we're doing in networks, to come forward where you think we have a gap, or if you have some expertise that you think you could bring to the table and you need to, take a course on the weekend or a course or something like that you can see that would benefit, please bring that forward, because we need to draw on everybody's skills and expertise to really move this work forward. Comments around?
Yes, provinces.
Oh, sorry. Thanks for that. So yeah, there was the other question around the network formations and are we learning from best practices in other provinces? So yes and no. We haven't found another jurisdiction that has brought all of their networks together like we have. So this is going to be some new learning for us to do all of the networks under a common structure. Around best practices, yes and no. When we start to think about each of the individual portfolios and what they're doing, where they're reaching out. So definitely from the Physician Leaders Network, there was a scan done across the country about what other provinces were doing. The EMR work that we're doing, we're tapped into Canada Health Infoway on some national forums to learn what's happening in other jurisdictions. Improvement facilitators, there's a group being just in formation, but it's improvement facilitators from across North America. They're talking about whether or not they want to expand into Europe and what some of those logistics might be. So we're definitely starting to tap in. Our early learning is that we're ahead of the game with a lot of the work that we are doing, but there are definitely, as with everything, pockets of excellence that we've been able to see emerging. So a little bit of both, but if you're aware of anything for us to tap into, please bring that forward as well, because of course we're in the know with everything that's going on. And so that's not just different networks that are around, but there's learning opportunities, conference opportunities, places for us at work to share the good work you're doing, as well as to go and gather the work that others are doing. Please let us know. And Bonnie Nix has been collecting and making a list of a lot of the conferences, so we can take a look and see if there's opportunities for us internally and as well as for our customers. So I themed these a little bit, and I realized perhaps I actually was subconsciously theming them because I've got a number of questions here around how to leverage the networks and how we're going to measure, prioritize, and goals, and how we're going to actually manage them, and can we manage them in a generic way. I have the answers to any of these questions that I think I can answer in a really definitive way, except to say this is all work that we have our eye on. So the first question there is, how do we leverage the networks? Eileen, when she introduced this, was we want to bring all of these networks together. We brought them together under one umbrella. How do we start to leverage that we're all together? What does it mean that we have a Physician Leaders Network and an Evaluation Network, that we have an EMR network and a communications network, and are there places where we would bring them together and cross-pollinate? And so how do we start to leverage the work from that external facing as well as internally? So how do we start to, for that last question there, can we manage the network in a generic way? We're just starting to figure that out. What are the common processes? What might be some of the common platforms, like are there electronic platforms that we need as a way to streamline things? I look to you, Tim, like from a website perspective, are the things that we can think about, but we're just starting to think about them. So again, asking all of you in the room, how can you help us? What vision do you have in terms of we're all under one portfolio now? What are those opportunities that you see from your perspective in the work that you've done? How do we measure? Bobby's already asked that question. Wanda's already asked that question. Some of those, Wanda and I had a conversation earlier today about some of those processes around measurement. So please keep bringing it forward. We haven't realized what that looks like from a portfolio perspective, how we're going to start to work with evaluation to help us to better define what those deliverables and objectives are going to be, so we can be measuring pieces and measuring meaningful work. Our eye on, we're measure something today, what are we going to be measuring 2 weeks down the road, or that we're measuring something in our portfolio, what are we measuring? What does that mean across the other portfolios as well? So as we're working together, do we have some common outcomes that we're working towards? So we're just in really early around getting some best measures around our work. Pause just because I've got a couple of evaluators in the room with us, and Eileen as well.
comment is it may vary depending on what the purpose of the network is. And some networks may be influenced even by groups like picnic. And so a good example of one of the networks is the government sort of education network, which is because it's governance. Some license that as zonal role kind of implementation thing. It's because it really is more of a network. We do have some people reside, I think, on some zonal teams participating in some in that network, but the network is much broader than that. It includes people from CHAS, the EEC, and some positions. Picnic also is driving sort of what the purpose is of us in that network and what our goal is. And so one of our things articulated is the output and the outcome that we hope to see from that network is in confidence of people who for the role of governing PCF. Do they have greater confidence? Do they feel more competent in the role? So we intend to sort of solicit that from an evaluation perspective. That may be quite different, though, than the goal of the and the purpose of the physician champion, which may have a very different purpose. So I think, well, there's probably some uniformity we benefit from, and certainly in the rigor of how we collect that. Each network may have a diverse purpose, and so its specific end goal needs to differ from one to the other.
Some new themes, definitely, that we want to get people to put on and figure out what makes sense together. But also, there's a lot of the work that's currently measuring itself right now. So you want to build on that. So Haley, you're already doing measures around events, and how do you determine if they were successful, not successful? And so we know that Michelle is already doing measures around the physician champions. Like we have existing measures that are going on. Same with communications, right, Alexis? Like there's already processes in place, and so I think we want to build.
Well, yeah, for that one, we're just reporting government that we've done it. We don't actually have any outcome measures. It's just output measures. So that just got me thinking about when we are doing measures, having that differentiation between an output. So I had 4 meetings in 4 months, which is what government requires, versus which outcome that we want to achieve. Yes. Because I don't know that we've got one for communications, but we probably need one.
And I'll give you an example. We just had a strengthening partnerships and transitions of care meeting, aka integration, and there's a measure there. I know it's fun. There's a measure there around the frequency and the reach of some of their messages into the networks of practice. So there are other projects that setting up measures for how effectively they work with the support teams, the evaluation teams, the events. So to let you know, it's all, the measures can help tie us together too.
Mm-hmm. Great. So just to quickly go through the rest of the questions here. Do we have a way to prioritize which networks we develop first? Yes and no. Some of them have money, grant monies attached to them. So we'll probably put some emphasis there where we have some money to spend and some extra resources to spare. That's a short, quick answer to that one. What is the end goal? To focus only on a few networks? No, I don't think so. I think we want to support all of them, but I think that we'll see that falls when we do the allocation, because we might have to go back on the support that we offer to some of them, and then it might be do we continue to have them, or do we just scale back on those networks? So that will be a conversation that we may need to have once we do some of those allocations. We manage networks in a generic way, to be determined, and I think that's a question that a lot of you can help us to figure out. So those of you that are working across multiple networks, where you start to see some localities, and I'm looking at Wanda, batting my eyelashes at her. She called me into her office at Newsday.
she called me into her visitors drop-down space today. She saw that. She said, I see, like, you're evaluating and we're tracking improvement facilitator and panel manager training in database. Is there a reason that we're not doing this for governance training as well? I wanted to start looking at what some of those outcomes are. So Wanda saw gap, and a few of you will be getting an invitation. Wanda's going to bring you together and talk about what that process could look like and whether we get that moving forward. So I need your eyes and ears on all of this to start to say, here we can streamline, here's where there's gaps. And then Wanda was like, I'll do it. And I was like, you're magical. So yeah, she's going to move that piece of work forward. So yeah, as you see those gaps, please let us know. There are questions. These were the questions from Team Day, but if there's anything else that's coming up for you before we move on.
Question, I guess I just like to throw it on that page. I'm going to full answer now. But I'm wondering what evaluators are change agents, and thinking about the evaluation community of practice, and I wonder if that can be kind of reconceptualized, because we know that a lot of the focus in that community practice is on Schedule B, but that doesn't really get us to teach medical homes. If we're just measuring for accountability. So I see like a gap and an opportunity there. Align it with agent kind of works.
Sure. We'll get to a slide in just a few minutes where we see it.
Okay.
Would you mind if we dig into that just quickly when we get there, when we get to the change agent slide, and we can talk a little bit more about that.
I just have one other question, and if we get to this and you'll get this, but are we going to have like a designated a person who's kind of responsible for certain there? Okay, yeah.
No, I planted all of these, Kendall.
We're getting increasingly suspicious.
So just one more quick note about Team Day. We were asked to do some prioritization. So you had lots of great ideas that we logged to say this is what we think you could do. The network's portfolio. These are the activities that you asked us to prioritize in the short term. So the first one there was a kickoff for the network's portfolio, which is still looking forward to putting a check mark beside that one. One is to meet with each of the project leads to start thinking a little bit deeper about the work in each of the projects, which you'll see in a slide or two here. Start to create project plans. And I think, Lisa, it was you that said, can we start with one and repeat? Can we take a learning from developing one of our project plans? So we know that some of the networks are a little more simple in what they're doing, but to Wanda's point about the evaluation network, can we actually pause and take a look at it instead of just moving ahead status quo? We have the opportunity to sit down with the leads and with the groups that are involved in supporting these to say where are our opportunities, where are gaps to do the work, and to actually write it down on paper, and then be able to follow through and say, well, this is what we think we could do in the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months with group to move it forward. That's a project plan. That's just to do that, and then to figure out the goals of the portfolio as a whole. So what is that we're trying to do? So as you'll see, since you've asked to prioritize these pieces of work, they're not pieces of work that have been done yet. I guess I'd just like to give a shout out to Antonia, who's with us on the phone today, who's been working hard trying to bring some of the information together around the project plans. So brought together a little bit around the Physician Leaders Network, drafted some pieces of the IF Network last week that I was able to float by our lead, Sandy, with the IF Network with that. So we're getting there, and we'll be calling on each of you involved with each of the projects to help us out with that. Activities that you asked us to look at short term. Any questions or comments about that?
Just a quick question. So, is it just terminology? So, a project is not an integrated team or a portfolio lead, correct?
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Kelly.
Individual project.
Yes. Yes. And your phone's been awfully quiet. I just do a stop and do a quick check-in to see if there's any questions from the phone.
Nope.
One thing I would clarify, kind of strange, so in the vast majority of all of the projects within the networks of practice, you do the development and sort of the role of the activity. In the governance one, it's a bit of a strange split. I'm not sure whether we will keep it this way forever. I think we have to talk about how it can be best be done. So the development of governance products for teaching or to use by the network in the governance portfolio, actual network, people who actually then take that material and roll it out is in the networks of practice. That split, I don't know if we'll rectify that over time or not.
There's a continuum grant in that there is somewhere it's developed somewhere else and then it's rolled out through networks, but there is somewhere, and I'll say opioid as an example, developed under the population community-based planning, but then we will customize the development to say how we modify this for each of the different audiences in networks of practice. And the far end of the continuum where we develop and deliver.
The project plans will be a bit of a mixed bag where some will just more of the rollout kind of function, and some will be all-encompassing.
Thanks. So we already took a quick look at this slide earlier around what the integrated team structure looks like. Do we want to pause here again? Are there any other questions that have been waiting for you, or we move on to the next? And so you're studying it in the room in Edmonton?
Some of us are more blind than us. We will get there at one point in your life.
So where does networks fit? And it's kind of riding on the coattails of the last one. Grant, I know we didn't arrange this before, but I'll have to give you your $10 as well for that plant there in terms of the development and the delivery. So networks of practice is neither directly just delivery, nor is it just development, though it's a little bit of both. And so we really see ourselves as a bridge, but not a bridge that always needs to be there. Sometimes development and delivery that might get into a boat and paddle across, and we might watch from afar, or maybe there alongside as development is tossing something over to delivery, so we can start to work our network. So it's just another way. If we think about those 41 primary care networks that we have, and the zone delivery are going in to say, we've got this product, we've got this support, how we help you with this element of the integrated patient medical home. That's one way to get in. Another way to get in is through the networks. So we could potentially tapping all 41 networks. If we have a physician champion participating from every one of the primary care networks, we can be messaging through that channel as well. So they might be hearing it again to Eileen's point in a customized way for that physician champion audience, and they might be hearing things that they share with their physicians, while the PCN as a whole might be hearing it in a different way. So we have these opportunities to message the PCN as a whole and to be sharing through the networks of practice, whether that be through training and education, strategic messaging. Michelle is smiling at me from across the room. I think she wants to chime in. No. Michelle's been leading some of the content development. So yeah, that's what you said was saying, is that it's not development, it's not delivery, but it's a little bit of both, and where it's handoff. We're going to have to be quite deliberate about starting to figure that out. And that's a request that Eileen and Arvel have made. Keep asking me, how are you connecting with the other portfolios to start thinking about some of those processes and structures? So, there'll be some work to do, and especially the other networks, the other portfolios, think about what their chunks of work are as well. Think for that. So just something really quickly, I popped this slide in because I wanted to just a quick comment about where we're at with the work that you're doing. So, of course, the whole organization is undergoing a lot of change in structures and in some cases in the work that individuals are doing. But some of you might still be on the same road where your work actually feels much different than it did a year ago or 2 years ago. Just wanted to say that that's okay. Structures might be changing around you, but that your work might be the same. For others, you might be on that same road, just waiting for the change. And I'll look at Wanda again today too, because earlier she said, I'm ready to do things differently. And I said, that's great. Let's think about how we can do this differently, because we don't need to wait for anything else to change around us before we change the way we're looking at logging this piece of work. We know that we own this, and we can move that ahead. So I just want to strike that balance of your work might not feel different, and that might be okay, and that just might be because your work isn't changing under the new structure. For some of you, you might feel the same, but waiting for a change to happen. And if we can make that happen without waiting for all of the rest of our structure to be in place, then let's talk about that. And again, that's where I want you to come talk to me, talk to the different project leads about the work that can be done. And then some of you might be feeling like things are pretty different for you. So recognize what road, or maybe playing on the grass between same change. So, was there a question?
I didn't have a question, but I was curious though about how people saw themselves, like how much change people have experienced, and it doesn't have to be, everything, but I'm just wondering if that helped people think, oh, gee, that's right, and how it felt for them. Would it share what where their work has changed and whether or not that's okay or being on that road?
I can share something from the communications perspective. So it's interesting because we a while ago completely changed the way that we led our community of practice for communications. And it was a lot more work for our team, and the output, like the actual number of PCNs coming, dropped considerably. So I actually ended up going back to the old format, which was more information sharing. But this has got me wondering, is that the best use of that network's time, and what changes can we look at making to make the call a lot more effective for them? I think right now it's the same, but I see this as an opportunity to learn from some of the other networks to see if we can get to some of that change to make the call a lot more to the communicators in particular.
I'll be curious, other groups, I'm sure, want to know what change did you make that then, would say you tested and then found, wasn't what you expected. So
I'd be happy to talk about that. It was just interesting because it was feedback we got from them that ended up perhaps being just one squeaky wheel rather than the big of the whole.
Point. Anyone else?
Well, take a stab at addressing our perspective, but if it's not yours, you just stand up to that. I think our work has been the same. I think we're steadfast on the same road, but Wanda and I have been actively trying to bring the fork in the road closer to us because it's been too far away and we're trying to get there quicker.
Good. Thanks. Anyone on the phone?
I think Michelle Hene has counted for 8. Wait, 8. Okay.
Okay. I thought someone on the phone, but then they cut out, so I'm not sure.
Wait.
Okay.
Okay. Kendall's starting again. All right. So just really quickly, in the last 20 minutes here that we have together, to show you a quick snapshot of how we're arranging the work in network. So we were given a pile of work, and then Eileen and I put it all into a box, and we closed the box, and we shook it around, and we dumped it out, and we said, okay, let's start putting this work together. Actually, you see what you see here because really what we did is we put all of the work onto sticky notes and then stuck them on the wall in my office here at SAO. You're kind of seeing a recreation of that here. And under networks of practice, I'm calling it here the stream of work. And so that's not official language, that's just language that I put in about how we could start thinking about dividing up the work. Now, some of these actually might be artificial as we start to think about what those big deliverables are. And we've been back and forth and back again around, do we actually distinguish between change agent networks and support networks? That's a question that we have. We think training and development and the events, are they actually one and the same? Do we need to do any purpose for us to have them separated out? So I don't know the answers to those questions. This could be a solution, but interested in your thinking around how we've divided this up, and we'll explain to you what our early thinking is, and we're totally up for having that challenge. But what we did is we divided up all of the work that we saw in front of us in terms of the project, and we bucketed them under these headers: the change in network, support networks, training development, and events. So I'll give you a quick view of what they look like. And these are the change agent networks that we listed. And you'll see there, so I forget who asked the question earlier around, it's Alexis. Each of projects has a lead assigned to them. So you'll see that most of them there have an individual, or we've attempted to put an individual beside them. But these are the networks so far that have taken out as our change agent network. Transition Leaders Network, the Improvement Facilitator Network, the Equip Team in Calgary, the Equip Team in Edmonton, the Clinic Managers, the EMR Peer-to-Peer Group, EMR PCN Specialist Group, and Panel Managers. Just bigger. I don't ruin anything. I'm scared. Oh, sorry, we're going to try something. Okay, we just try to make it a little bit here. Tim, question.
What was how did you choose where to put things for now? I know you're deciding, do we need both of them and that kind of stuff, but for now, what is the difference between a change agent network? Why you decided for EMR peer-to-peer in this part?
Yes, thanks. Really great question. So what we defined, and this will start to answer Wanda's question as well around the change agent network, is these are the individuals who are working directly with the clinic. So their role as a change agent, they are ones in their role expected to be interfacing with the clinic, with the physicians, and with the team who are on the front line. So they're directly, technically influencing There's not sort of a layer in between. So that was our thinking when we put the changes together. Eileen wants to pipe in.
Yeah, and I think there's one other element. So that's one piece, and the other element is performing systems, a high ratio of change agents within a group, and so change agents, people where we want more. So whereas the support teams, we don't necessarily, it's not our goal to double the number of evaluators and PCNs, or double the number of communications team members, or double, like in the support ones, we want to work with them more effectively, but in change agents, we also want more of them. So it helps us, so that would be another discerning piece. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The ability to influence whether or not those ones grow versus, because the ones, I will have no influence over whether or not a PCN hires a communicator. That's a decision that they'll make. But with this, just wondering if that's part of another piece of it that we can influence growing these ones.
I think what we're trying to do, that will be part of that connection with zonal delivery. So how can we use our zonal teams, at the governance level to influence how the resources are allocated? How can we ensure at that executive director level that the individuals are being hired? How can that work be allocated? Sue, I don't know if you have any comments on that. I know that you work out there in the delivery.
Well, it makes sense to me. Especially given what Eileen has just said, that makes sense to me. So.
Yep, we want to make sure that we have the right number of people in the delivery. We'd be working with delivery, so I would say, and actually, Carrie Remington came to me the other day and said her and Bill had put up a grid that who are the individuals, who are the influencers in each of the PCNs, who are the physician leaders, and said, we know that we don't have enough of them. So Lori, how are you going to support us to get more physician leaders? The PCNs need more individuals, physicians who can stand in the front of the room and share messages, or physicians who can go from clinic to clinic and share the message of the patient's medical home with peers. So that was the question that came to me from Zone. What are you doing to promote that work?
We speak to the relationship between Physician Leaders Network and Physician Champions.
Sure. I'll take that one, Eileen.
I could.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I can do that. So the Physician Leaders Network is a little bit more broad in terms of how we're supporting the development of each of the physician leaders in a broad way.
So is the Physician Champion? It's embedded in there.
Yeah. And so the physician, and we're trying to rebrand that for the next meet that they have into Physician Champions Connect is what we're tossing around to say that's just where that group they can connect and come together in that network versus the broader thinking around that is what are some of the resources that we can provide? How can we link them into HI or into a webinar that we have internally or into some external resources based on where they want to build and develop?
And rebranding would help, just so that it's more inclusive, because that is very specific in my mind anyway, and in a lot of people's minds, it's very specific. But so the way you're using it, though, is champion. Anyone can say, I'm a champion, and I want to help. Right. So a champion is very self-directed. With a leader is, I've been asked to take on this role. I've been asked to formally be the zonal quality leader, or I've been asked to be the panel management trainer, or so that's the other way in the literature. Okay. In the literature that we're doing with the University of Alberta, they identified that difference for us. So I just wanted to. And that makes sense. So if we developed a physician champion to a point where they could become a physician leader, where we're actually asking them to go out to talk to PCNs or talk at, or whatever, that's when they're stepping into that more leader role, when we've asked them to do that. And more so when someone else asks them to do it. Right. Yeah. So, but absolutely, that's a continuum.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm just cognizant that we just have a few minutes left, and I've got just a bit of this information to blow through. I'm going to quickly show you what we have here, and then I'm going to give you access to all of this so you can take a look at it and comment as well. For the Change Agent Network, this is the piece that we have now. I don't know how I. Another way. And so I'm going to make you squint on purpose here because I don't want to get down into the nitty-gritty details here, but this is just what we've done to say this is what we're going to deliver in each of those projects. So Physician Leaders Network is a project with a project lead. The IF Network is a project within this project lead, and what we say we're actually going to deliver on. So, for instance, I know Bonnie and Wanda, you can think of for us, help us out with this, because it's a lot of widget things. We do have a lot of work to do. How do we get from just counting our activity to actually defining what that meaningful change is? That's where we'll really be calling on our evaluation team to help us to define that. But for now, just to help us so in thinking about what is the work that we're going to deliver, I mentioned earlier on that we're looking at how we can actually allocate the work. This is just the early thinking on, okay, well, we know that we want to deliver a certain number of webinars and events, and what is it going to take from each of the individuals to do that work? So right now, we've just really penned down the activities in order to allocate, and our next step is actually getting down to the level of what now then, what does. So we've delivered 10 webinars this year for the improvement facilitator work. What did we accomplish by doing that? So that's the next step of the work. This first bit is just about how can we actually just allocate people to what we're doing. And we just took it and divided them into quarterly objectives. Again, not intending for you to squint here, but if we say we're going to deliver 10 webinars annually, we've just broken out by quarter what we're actually looking to deliver by quarter. Again, we can start to allocate the work that way. No worries, I'll send this out to you. So here's our support network, and again, you'll see one evaluation has fallen under that support network because those evaluators are not out directly. Their job isn't working out in the clinic, or that role isn't working face-to-face. So not to say that they will occasionally work at the client. The majority of the work of the individuals that you see here, so the evaluation, communication, finance, and the NES, we could argue that they're all change agents, but they're in a supportive role, and we think that they can be leveraged for help to promote patients' medical home. They're just at an arm's away. So again, dividing them up from the change agent network might be somewhat artificial right now, but that's just not, we know that just yet. So we're just bringing the distinction right now in terms of, what are those broad deliverables going to look like. We start thinking about what the supports are that we need. How do we, does it actually make a difference that we break them out? So Grant, I know you've talked a couple of times about that governance group of leaders. We would probably see them land here as well. Yeah. So yeah, we're open to adding more. For sure, people have been feeding back to me saying, "Oh, you forgot this, you forgot, or you missed one." So Grant, we can add a sticky note, but you'll have to let me know who that project lead is at the same time.
there might also be opportunities to, like, if I think about communications, like, we've got that fairly broad, but there might be an opportunity for a website one. I'm just putting it out there, no pressure, Tim, we don't have to create one, but that might be an opportunity, something that we want to look at, or others in the future.
Yeah, an important point to what you said, Wanda, is whether it's named change agent or support. Your question was, can it be re-envisioned? Can we think of it operating in a different way? And the answer is yes. So it doesn't have to be named change agent. The support networks also can be revisioned to figure out how they can have a broader, more and a stronger impact to support the field and where we're going. So the answer is yes, even if the field doesn't change.
Yep.
I work with several, like, network communities that are purely within the PCN world. So we don't necessarily associate with them at all, except that I do as far as tech goes. I support, like, happiness basics programs and health basics programs as far as their delivery across the province. Is that completely outside of the scope of this Networks of Practice kind of, like, group? Yeah, easy enough.
Unless we it's the first I've heard of it, so unless we understand something more, then I would say completely outside.
Yeah. So Tim, why don't we have a chat about that and figure that out?
Because yeah, there's a few actually now that I think about it that you fall into.
There's several that I work with. I don't. That's something that is don't do anymore, or something that fits in here. They are, as far as I know, purely PCN run. They are provincial. They're,
Okay.
Medical home as far as all sorts of that.
Yeah.
I sort of have maybe a similar question. I don't know. So, for example, the example is evaluation, but it could apply to others. The evaluation COP kind of co-run and co-designed with AHS. So, in my mind, we have less ability to influence or change that one because it's not just an AMA facility run network. So, is this saying we are taking ownership of it, or what are the implications there?
The structure of it doesn't change if that's our reality, is that we're in a partnership. I think we're in a partnership if we look at our governance training as well. That's a partnership there. Physician Leaders Network, although we are owning it, we're making sure that we are collaborating very closely with our partners who are doing similar work, supporting. So like the college is a great example, and the work that Adam Filiatro leads. So working alongside with our partners in that. I know that's not exactly evaluation, but no, you're right. So we can't just take it and blow it up, but do you have the opportunity to sit down with our partners, have those discussions, I think is the question.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Cut off.
We're going to get cut off at 3:30.
Oh, are we? Okay. So you can take a quick look. Train development. There's those two pieces around governance and patient medical home capacity building. I used the example earlier with Wanda coming forward, and she saw a gap there. We're in our early thinking around what training and development is and where that path off happens. So specifically with Mark Watt's portfolio with Patients Medical Home, all of the content development there, with Andrea and all of the development there. So right now we're just falling on one end of the spectrum, saying what are the opportunities that we can bring them together around processes for posting, for advertising, for evaluating. So we're taking a look there as the other portfolios start to get a handle, and then we'll be making more connections there to work a little bit more on those gray areas. But that's just a really quick introduction there to the work around training and development. And then so far we've had that Change Agent Day that we have every year supporting the Change Agent individuals and the Change Agent Network. We're talking about whether APCC fits under the network's portfolio. So far some early thinking is that, yep, will take it on and support through networks. And then are there other events? I know Alexis has been in my ear about one of them. We've had a couple of ad hoc events supporting change agents. So I'm just kind of working on how we'll start to support that. But I'll be honest, not a lot of thought has gone yet with.
Sorry, I was just wondering about AMA orientation too, and this probably fits under there as well.
Yeah, that's the conversation we've been having to figure out where
it falls.
put it. Yeah. And there's arguments I think made for it to be under integrated team support and change as well as networks. So kind of hash that out.
We're playing hot potato. But yeah, just how do we organize the events and where does it make sense? And do we leverage it because it makes sense as a network, or do we leverage it because it makes sense from a structural? So having all sorts of
and I was just thinking about the information that occurs at those, like a way of making sure that all of our materials have the most recent information on CPAR or or governance or whatever, and having it in one place where someone is looking at that constantly might be helpful.
Yeah.
Especially when we're communicating with our customers, and we want everything to look and feel the same. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's a great reason that it would be out there, because we'll have those processes in place or training.
Yeah.
All right. Exactly at 3:30, so just a really quick wrap up or what's next. So as you requested, we'll be meeting with the project leads to validate the work that we're doing and to create great project plans. Definitely working to engage the evaluation team to help to move thinking to the next level, and just make sure that we're aligning the work from the portfolio. So that's some of the work that I need to take away, work with Alexis and the rest of the team, so that all of the work lines up. And then figuring out the feedback loop, so how I continue to messages back to you, how that information is flowing in the broader integrated team is something that's yet to be determined. And also what's next is I'm going on holidays. I'll be gone for the next 3 weeks. Thank Bonnie Nick, who got this meeting together for us fairly quickly. We could have this launched before I left. Wanted to leave you with a bit early thinking so you could percolate things. So Sonia Eileen will be holding the fort. So if there's any epiphanies, anything that you really need to move forward with in the next 3 weeks, if you could work with Ansonia and Eileen to do that, that's where I would direct you. So any last minute comments before I just give a big thanks for all of you coming out and listening and participating today. Thanks so much, everyone, for participating and for all the work that you've done so far and all the work that's coming. Open door anytime you want to send an email. Come to the office and chat. My door's always open.
No, I'm just going to get this one sentence in, which is, without networks of practice, we're always going to have islands of success, and we're never going to get to scale. Networks of practice is what get us to scale by PMH. So, woohoo to everybody here. Like, this is the place to be. So,
Thanks, Eileen. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.